So Ravens flock, Anquan Boldin has reminded us again the difference between mindsets in the old Raven defenses compared to the Ravens defense that we have currently had the past couple seasons. So Anquan Boldin sat down for an interview with Udonis Haslam and Mike Miller. It's a pretty interesting interview hearing him talk about really his whole life essentially, but the main thing that caught many Ravens fans' attention a few days ago was hearing him describe what it was like going into practice with that Ravens defense where you had iconic players like Ray Lewis, Haloti Ngata, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed, like so many names, so many people who either are going to be Hall of Fames or at the very least players who are going to be considered one of the best of their generation. And he talked about how it was definitely a culture shift for him coming from the Arizona Cardinals where the offense was running the show over there to go to the Baltimore Ravens where the defense is the star of the show by far. And he also talked about some of the ways that would some of the differences you would see, like the defense taking a lot of cheap shots at the offensive players. And it's not like we had soft players on offense at that time. Like we had some dogs on offense as well, but clearly our defensive players, they still were so confident and also so aggressive that they didn't even care that we had dogs on our offensive side of the ball. But Anquan also talked about how he was not going for that. I thought that was pretty funny hearing him talk about how he let it be known to these guys if they take cheap shots at him that they're gonna have problems. But at the same time, man, it's just interesting hearing that sort of perspective when you think about our Ravens defense now, because many people have tried to compare the Ravens defense of the past 2 years to what happened in the 2000s and, well, I guess you could say the early 2010s because that's when Anquan came into the picture. But specifically the 2000s, many Ravens fans, they want to bring back that 2000s era defense. And I've said many times, I don't think it's going to happen. It's not even realistic to hope that that happens because, number one, there's just too many flags. Like, if you make eye contact with Patrick Mahomes, that's a 50-yard penalty. There's no way you're going to be able to have the mentality and the aggressiveness that those Ravens defenses had 20 years ago. You're not going to bring that into 2025. And I do believe that also affected how it also affects how these players practice. In 2010, 11, 12, when Anquan comes into the picture, at that time, the game was still being called differently compared to how it's called in 2025. So, of course, if they're allowing these players to get some really tough shots off in the game, of course, they're going to let players take cheap shots during practice. In 2025, I just don't see that being the case. But even though I don't think that's going to be something that you can recreate, that doesn't mean you can't still take the mindset into 2025. And at times it doesn't feel like the Ravens defense, despite how many star players we have, despite how many high profile players we have, despite how much we get talked about on these news networks for, on paper, having a good defense, we all know that this defense hasn't truly had dogs like that. We see players come about here and there like Marcus Peters and a few others who have remnants of that old Ravens mentality that we wanted, but in this new era of the Ravens defense, you're not gonna get Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and that's a once in a lifetime thing, but that doesn't mean we can't still find a way to bring the mindset to 2025. One of my favorite things that happened this offseason was Marlon Humphrey. A few weeks ago, he said in a press conference interview that he wants to bring back that Ravens defensive identity. And I think that would be the start of trying to reestablish that sort of mindset of truly being a dominant defense full of dogs, full of bullies, full of people who are capable and willing to knock your head off. And I'm interested to see who's going to step up this season. There's several players that have contracts coming up. So just from that alone, I think there's going to be some added motivation. But I would hope that they would see this Anquan Boldin interview and feel a little frustrated. Not frustrated in a bad way, but just like a little motivated of like, hey, he's describing something that maybe we haven't been able to live up to, right? Because even though many Ravens fans and Ravens coaches and the Ravens media team, they talk a lot about Ravens culture and this tradition of defense, as we've talked about many times, in the biggest moments, this Ravens defense doesn't actually make a difference in these games. Like we saw that in the playoffs. We've seen that in the playoffs for the past 7 years. When we get to these massive moments, they they just don't make a big difference. At least not yet. That can change this year. If they change it this year, it's a completely different conversation. But so far for the past several years, that hasn't been the case. Like you hear one of the other things Anquan Boldin mentioned was how they knew on offense all they had to get was like maybe 14, maybe 21, and they would be set. They knew the defense would be able to get the job done, even if they were kind of underperforming. Because if I'm not mistaken, the year we won the Super Bowl, I don't think our defense ranked that high during the regular season. I could have sworn we were like middle of the pack, but still, in those moments of truth, in those major moments, they knew they had to step up, and they did. Will our defense step up this year in those major moments? Because inevitably, we're going to end up playing the best teams in the NFL. Obviously, we're going to, as long as we all stay healthy, we're going to get to the playoffs. The question is, will the real Ravens defense stand up in these moments and make us proud to be Ravens fans again? Not to say we're not proud, but you know what I mean. Just make us excited and make us feel like we're back to being the bullies of the NFL. Only time will tell. Let me know, do you think that the Ravens defense in 2025 will get back to that mindset of being true bullies? Or do you think that the time has passed and it's just not possible to recreate the mindset that people like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed had back so many years ago?